Instead of the state building nationwide sanitation capacity by itself, it outsourced much of that responsibility to one company, ignoring about 34 equally capable sanitation companies. Because of a strong government support and funding, Zoomlion, through that, was able to build tracks. They were able to build transfer stations. In fact, they built medical waste systems. They built landfills. So now one company is so much empowered that it's far ahead of all its competitors in the country. And this company is not state-owned, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it. So obviously, when there's a change of government and the decision to cancel Zoomlion comes in the decision, it directly or indirectly affects the country's sanitation. I have been following the conversation regarding Zoomlion, and yes, to a larger extent, I commend the critics and accountability questions being asked, especially those raised by Manasseh Azure. We can't dispute the fact that every cedi of public money deserves scrutiny. Every government contract deserves transparency. That is how democracies improve. But I also think we are making one intellectual mistake here, because we are placing one company in the dock when perhaps the entire sanitation architecture of Ghana should be standing trial. I mean, the government agencies responsible for ensuring sanitation in Ghana should be the ones on trial. And now, hear me out on why I am making these bold assertions. There's a difference between an operator and a system. And this is my argument. Instead of the state building nationwide sanitation capacity by itself, it outsourced much of that responsibility to one company, ignoring about 34 equally capable sanitation companies. In my search, I found that there are equally capable sanitation companies. So now one company had the scale. Because of a strong government support and funding, Zoomlion, through that, was able to build tracks. They were able to build transfer stations. In fact, they built medical waste systems. They built landfills. They built street sweeping operations. They employed thousands of workers, and they possessed nationwide logistics for sanitation works. The remaining capable sanitation companies in Ghana then had less or no operational reach at all. So now one company is so much empowered that it's far ahead of all its competitors in the country. And this company is not state-owned, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it. So obviously, when there's a change of government and the decision to cancel Zoomlion comes in the decision, it directly or indirectly affects the country's sanitation. And you may argue how the termination of the contract affects sanitation. But maybe the recent rains in Accra, which caused the tragedy, the flood, will serve as an audit. We all saw it. And in my study and my observation, I realized about 9,000 getting to 12,000 tons of solid waste was conveniently swimming in the flats, especially in our big gutters in Alajo and the Odo River and other major gutters. This wasn't the usual thing when Zoomlion was actively operating. So now think about it. This is how dangerous that sounds. If ending one contract can allegedly collapse sanitation in an entire country, then who is the problem? Is it the system or the contractor? Rationally, at any point in time, if a contract is ended, it shouldn't affect the work. It should continue. And yes, think about it. You see, stay with me in my enclosure and let me review this to you. Accra alone generates an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 tons of waste every single day. That is more than municipal waste of an entire country like Comoros, Cabo Verde, or Eswatini. So the problem is that only a small proportion, not even up to 15% of that large tons of waste is being recycled and handled properly. The majority still ends up in landfills. Most of them ends up in open dumping sites, drains, or somewhere in the environment. Ghana has built an economy that is exceptionally good at collecting this waste, but remarkably poor at preserving it or recycling it and preventing it from occurring. And yes, that's how come some regional ministers even get excited about cleanup exercises. Instead of measuring waste reduction and we building large recycle plants in these regions. You see, these are two completely different philosophies. One manages symptoms, the other eliminates the disease. Ladies and gentlemen, from my observation, we've mistaken sanitation for waste collection. I think most of the efforts that we put into sanitation goes into waste collection. So imagine a hospital that spends 90% of its budget on ambulances and almost nothing on preventing diseases. Will you call that a healthcare system? Obviously no. We will call it an emergency response business. That is exactly the sanitation system Ghana has built. Yes, I call it the cleanup economy when it comes to sanitation. So let me be fair. Manasseh is fighting for accountability. Zoomlion argues that it has built nationwide operational capacity. Both conversations matter, but neither conversation answers the real question. Why has a country of over 34 million people designed a sanitation model so dependent on one contractor that every policy discussion begins and ends with one company, Zoomlion? That should worry us more than any other contract, because resilient systems are designed so that when one operator exists, another immediately takes over and the work gets done without national panic. So, to these government institutions, the Ministry of Local Government, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Metropolitan, Municipal and District Assemblies, the National Development Planning Commission, and all agencies that are responsible for the nation's sanitation, please, I humbly ask, where is the long-term sanitation blueprint? Does Ghana have something like that we can look at, that other countries can emulate? Obviously. Where is the national waste reduction strategy? In fact, I'm asking, where is extended producer responsibility? In fact, this is very important to me. That compels manufacturers of sachet water, packaging and shopping bags to finance the recovery of the waste they introduce into the market. In fact, by now, these companies should be bearing the cost of the flat outcome. Trust me. Where is the investment that makes recycling more profitable than dumping? Because I expect an intelligent country like Ghana not to merely collect waste, but design systems that prevents waste production or reduces it drastically in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps it is time we stop debating personalities and finally start designing systems. Because until Ghana builds institutions that are stronger than individual contractors, the next sanitation debate will simply have to fall on a different sanitation company. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to use this opportunity to commend Buz Stop Boys and all the other guys that are making an effort, putting in the advocacy and works for Ghana's sanitation to improve. Thank you so much for watching this video. If today is your first time watching me, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel and share this video to others. See you again in the next meaningful conversation.